Hello and welcome to the Make It Your Business podcast with myself, James Murray from James Murray Finance, and Duncan Casey from Copper Sprocket. Welcome, Duncan.
Thank you.
We've now reached over 10 episodes, so I thought it'd be great if we went for a bit more controversy. I think we deserve it. So
yeah,
well, let's upset a few listeners or viewers.
Sounds good.
No, it's not that bad. Today we're going to talk about remote working. There's been a bit of a pendulum swing moving in the direction of getting people back into the office, and as business owners, for either large teams or for SMEs, or whether you're just part of a leadership team, I think it's an important conversation to have, and I think there's quite a lot of nuances to it as well. So it's not as binary as some might think, and I think it can be industry specific. And I thought we'd just delve in today and see where is the pendulum. We've seen a few businesses lately, some large independents, John Lewis, HSBC, Boots, Amazon, all asking staff to go back into the office. I know it's a big topic of conversation, so let's delve into it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So let's start with the question: is remote working? Is that dream fading, or are we just seeing it evolve?
Well, is it a dream? In the first place, I think hybrid working is. It seems to me all we're looking at, yes, is a pendulum swing, but perhaps coming back another way. I suppose what will happen or have happened as a result of the pandemic and lockdowns is that a lot of these, you're seeing a lot, aren't you, of co-working spaces and, all that kind of thing. A lot of industrial places are kind of, empty and barren and not knowing what to do with themselves all of a sudden because of the speed of change. I think was the problem. And I suppose in certain sectors and markets, you do need people in an office to do the job. But because we're such a service-led country in general, and especially in the West, I think it is mainly service-based economies now, and because technology and internet connections and everything are what they are, technically you can do the work from home. But it depends, I think there's going to be a push to get people back together and into an office environment. But is the dream fading? I suppose it implies a degree of imposition from employers.
I was going to say, yeah, because I think the dream is for maybe employees.
Yeah.
I think more than employers. I think there's an element of control. I mean, so we're looking at people like John Lewis now limiting home working to 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. HSBC are warning staff bonuses could be cut in office environments where there's not an in-office minimum requirement met. And as I say, Boots, Amazon, JP Morgan are all pushing for 4 to 5 days in the office. So those sort of businesses are clearly asking people to go back. But I know there's also a bit of resistance because the employees have the power to look at other companies that might offer that home working solution, which essentially gives a much better work-life balance. Objectively speaking, there's obviously, we'll get into some of the downsides of that later, but you can see why there might be a sort of a resistance to go back into the office for employees, but also why those larger corporates in those sort of sectors are pushing for people to go back.
I suppose you can see it as the remote working is the kind of avatar of the balance of power in the set. It's the battleground between employer and employee. Control over.
Yeah.
Leverage, what's the word? Leverage.
Yeah, leverage. Yeah, so it's what they can leverage really and negotiate.
Because we've technically got a socialist government in name only, really say, but they, in theory, you would expect there'd be more of a push to. I know they know employees get all their rights day one or whatever, but it does seem a grey area, the kind of working from home, because I don't think anyone's really figured it out. Like, obviously we were forced to for a while, and I think, and people do make the very salient point that you will have a whole generation who came into their professional life and that's all they knew, or all they know, is working from home.
Yeah.
And I think there are definite upsides to it, but there are also, as someone who works from home all the time, basically, it's not perfect.
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Yeah, I've had the benefit of both, so I think I can speak for both sides, and there's definitely pros and cons. I mean, let's have a little look then at where, and I think pendulum is probably the right example, because during COVID, that pendulum probably got a little bit more momentum because out of necessity, and maybe it went too far.
But it wasn't organic.
Well, that's what I mean. It wasn't a natural shift. Technology probably moved on quicker, or we started adapting technology better that was already there. Who'd heard of Zoom before 2020? It wasn't really sort of something that was widely talked about, and by 2021, I think everybody had an account. So, but the industries that we mentioned there, John Lewis, so that's a good example. So they're at buyer, merchandiser roles. The argument would be that they need a faster feedback loops, product immersion, and face-to-face coordination. So that matters ultimately because it's hard to keep alignment across complex supply chains, and doing that essentially from a laptop in a kitchen makes it a lot more difficult, both in terms of the strategic practicalities of that role, but also managing it as well. So retail and that's sort of retail and buying. Then banking and finance. So HSBC, there was an example. That's financial services. So they're big on optics, but also compliance. I think that's another factor that can come into play here, especially with all of the Marks and Spencer's obviously got cyber attack, didn't they? So there's things like that come into play. Obviously, with banking the way it is, there's a lot of accountability there. Is there less accountability if you are working from home? So you could also go trust, relationships.
That's the big one, I think, from an employer's perspective, isn't it? They assume that they can't monitor what you're doing. So in other words, you could goof off the entire day, but then that's also not true, because obviously there would be no output, and there would be. And I suppose it's what do you value? What do you
value and what do you measure?
Yeah, are you a purely sort of a presenteeism based business, in which case, well, whether they're at home or in the office, they're not going to do it, or are you just, can you measure their output?
But then that falls on the line. I wonder if there's people working from home that feel they would have a bit more autonomy working from home, but actually they're being micromanaged because they're having to check in because the management team are pushing for them to make sure they are where they're meant to be, or maybe pushing higher targets for them to hit, so they can measure that, because they can't do the look for test.
Yeah. And actually working from home is no guarantee of efficiency. It can be way, I don't like doing it generally. I'd rather go to an office.
Well, that goes on to the other one, which is so with some of the more sort of sales development roles. So again, that's from my background as well. Energy, team momentum, the coaching that you get with sales is quite important. I think remote working kind of strips out a lot of that. And then you've got junior reps that come in. A CRM system isn't alone going to be able to solve all their problems or answer all of their questions. They need osmosis. So I think those are the sort of probably the three sort of sectors that are probably most heavily pushing towards people going back into the office.
It goes back to what we said about who, not how. That passage I spoke about. It's assumed that a lot of your output is based on your personality and who you are, but actually it's based on your environment you're around, and it's 100%, and especially in sales, I have to imagine that you're working remote, because look, if you're a business owner, you're in sales and marketing, you just are. And I find I'm an okay closer, but I'm not I hate doing outreach. I'm terrible. I just, and most people know that's usually their worst point as well. And but were I in an environment where that was going on, because the big hang up is I don't like phoning people and bothering them. But if you're surrounded by people doing that anyway, you're going to feel like, oh, well.
Yeah. It's not just accountability. It's sort of, it's just sort of blending in.
To do it. And so that is, It's the same thing when you're making a movie. I mean, this is the problem with actors. We spend so much time on our own, not working, which is counterproductive. And actually, that's, people look down their nose at soaps and that kind of thing, but you are literally doing the work every day. You're going in 9 to 5. But there's very, very few, apart from theatre, but then even theatre, once you're up and running, you're doing it in the evening or maybe a matinee. And you're just doing the same thing again and again. Whereas something like a soap, it's just continually on to the next thing, and you are honing a craft and also getting to do it all the time, and you're surrounded by those people. And so I think, you take that lesson out to other stuff. I think you do want to make sure you're surrounded by people. And of course, with actors, the irony is, of course, that we're supposed to be, reflecting the characters and stuff. And if we're not observing people very often, it can be counterproductive. So I know that, and I do my best work when I'm collaborating with other people. That's just a given. So it's about I guess finding ways to do that. But then I'm talking about it from a sort of, I'm used to being self-employed and all that stuff. Whereas I think if you're an employer and you're used to having teams in offices and that kind of thing, and structuring and procedures that way, I think you can find ways. But it just depends what you're doing.
I think if you're starting a business from the ground up and you're employing individuals and you're happy and there's a lot of trust and you know that the ethics and everything else is right within the team, the culture's there, the environment, also the IT infrastructure to facilitate working from home.
Yeah.
If that's all in place, then I think you can create quite a good hybrid model in the right industry sector. But if let's say you're a new manager into a business and you've come in halfway through and there's already working from home in place, let's say it was maybe 4 days a week or permanently, and you were then challenged with trying to bring the team together or improve results, that could be quite difficult from a management perspective. Or if you've maybe taken over a business, to change that culture without changing the entire staff base, because also if those people have been in there for a long period of time, they've maybe been in the office, they've gone away, or as you pointed out, they may have only ever known working from home. So it might be then quite difficult to change that all of a sudden, because it's quite a big, I remember managing people and trying to get them to move desks. People don't like change generally. So I have spoken to people that have said that they were sort of desperate to go back to the office. So I think that obviously
people with kids.
People Problem is everybody's got a dog now. So you can't.
And a banana bread.
So personal. Personal circumstances have changed as well. So people bought a dog during COVID or just after, and sort of they've all of a sudden got to change. They've got to get doggy daycare in, or they've got to arrange different things, or take your dog to work day.
It's. You said something, and it rang true for me there for a minute, and it's completely escaped me. And I wanted to say something, and I'm stalling for time while I'm trying to remember it, but I'm not really.
If it comes really to you,
I will.
You can just interject. We'll make a nice segue. We're not talented enough yet to edit. I think it's also worth mentioning on these. These are completely. This is all one take, isn't it?
It is all one take. Yeah.
So
I can cut it.
Just, when you blaspheme and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's come back.
It's come back.
Yeah,
so
go.
You were saying about having the right infrastructure in place, and something I've noticed recently, doing more cold calling and outreach, is quite often I'm contacting companies, unless they're big, and by big I mean 50 to 100 employees maybe or more. I'm finding that they'll have a landline number and put a switch desk or whatever, and you call through and you ask to speak to someone, they're not in the office today, or so-and-so they're not in the office, they're out of this because it's their kids' speech day today, or it's they're at home for some either they'll give a reason or they're just not in, or they're only in the office Wednesday and Thursday, or whatever it is, and you go, well, look, I'm ringing up to ultimately try and sell you something, so I can't be snippy about that. And if I was a client, I might be a bit, why aren't you where you're supposed? Now, if you had a switchboard or something that could ring through to their home number or to their mobile phone number, fine. They should still be reachable through the means you... That
does with some of the lenders I work with. So some of the banks, it goes through to a main line, but then it's picked up by somebody, and I've asked them, they're at home, and it's only been halfway through the call. I'm like, and I'm thinking they're in the office, and a lot of those cases, and again, that's in banking, I guess, and these are underwriters of underwriting policies and credit applications, and they're working from home quite effectively a lot of the time but they're in the office as well sometimes, but I generally don't know unless I hear something in the background that sounds a little bit more, a doorbell going, an Amazon man turned up. Amazon women, of course. Generally, they seem to be mainly men, but okay. So let's just swing now to where we're seeing, and unlike logically so, we're seeing more hybrid roles or working from home. I've done a bit of research on this of tech and development teams. Again, roles that maybe require deep focus, more insular roles. And also maybe be geographically spread throughout the country. That makes sense. But there is a sense of creative stagnation sometimes with that, because you're not surrounding yourself with other people or ideas. I know we talk AI a lot on this. I guess it's quite prevalent in business at the moment, but an AI developer, and he sets his team, they all work in the office, but on a Friday afternoon, he sets playtime, and they go and just play with AI. So they're set out to just go and try and do anything crazy, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And just to try and spark interest, spark intrigue, and learn something. And then they just have to come back and say what they did. And again, they all talk to each other, all being in the same room. That's quite a good thing to do.
Yes.
Even in a tech environment. Marketing and design, again, that kind of goes into that kind of deep work, deep focus sort of role.
I think the thing with that is, because I often think about this, and it's like kind of our area, but I think sometimes I get a bit of jealousy or FOMO, whatever you want to call it, of these bigger companies who have an office and branding, and they, and it's all cool, and meet the team and all this kind of stuff. Great, but you will have one way of working. Whereas if you're someone who has a network of people and creatives, it means you can more tailor a team to a project, and it means you have, essentially you've got the world at your fingertips, and you can diversify a team a lot more. But it's it's a double-edged sword, I suppose. It's just about.
Well, I think I put my notes here that hybrid tends to win here on a 2 to 3 day rhythm. So maybe in, out, and then you sort of get.
Yeah, I suppose in that case it's go in, have a meeting, discuss the storyboards, but then you just have to break up your week more, because again, a lot of this stuff it kind of relies on people working the same every day, and actually you might just need 2 days where you have your meeting on this project and that project, and then you all go away and do the work.
I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they were saying they were all in a room on Teams calls, and half of the team were in the same room but they didn't just do it as a sort of a boardroom type thing. They were all on individual laptops on having a team call, and then a few were on. So they might as well have just all been together having an actual physical meeting.
Yeah.
And it was really distracting apparently, because they could all hear each other's voices coming back on the thing. Yeah. They didn't even have headphones.
Oh God. Yeah. Getting feedback on that.
Sure. Yeah, it was really awful.
Yeah, echoey.
The other one I put is professional services, such as accountancy, legal practices, consultancy firms. So many of those currently, according to the research, are sort of doing 2 to 3 days work from home. But again, it sort of says juniors are struggling to build soft skills remotely, but they do sort of expect that more in-office nudges for mentoring and culture building.
Yeah.
So it's culture building. Sorry. So yeah, I think what we're kind of getting to here is, I think it's individual for each business, but it doesn't necessarily need to be specific to that sector. And you might have a sector where actually a vast majority of your competitors are going one way, but you might be able to stand out by going the other.
I mean, I have a goal. I would like an office. I would love to have an office that people can come and work in, but they don't necessarily have to. And that certain functions don't require someone in the office, because there are other things, right? I would like to be able to hire people who aren't local or aren't even in the UK, and that means that, we have to work remotely anyway. But I think, yeah, I would love to have an office with the core team in it, because I like, I like discussing things with people. I like bouncing ideas around. I think it's very important to be able to vocalize your ideas and have someone turn around and go, that's rubbish, or that's great, or, whatever, and be able to just brainstorm together and have a team. I that's one thing I really, really crave, is to have other people to work with. And though, yes, you can do it remotely, it's not the same at all.
I've got to say, I've got a lot of experience. I used to manage a sales team, a finance sales team, had a team of about 10, and we all used to be in the one room, and it was completely office based. And I've got sort of 3 main takeaways that I found from having that, and the reason that my pendulum swings more to working in the office: sales culture, mentorship and learning, and work ethic combined with management practices. And I'll delve into those individually, because, as I say, I found it incredibly beneficial having a whole team all working towards. We had singular goals and cultural goals as well. So as a culture, and I think culture is a word that's sort of overused a lot of the time. And I don't want to sort of say it, and I can sort of sense how this might come across in the wrong way. So sales culture in a non-toxic way. Mm-hmm. So when you've got people coming into a sales room, you obviously have like an hours that you start. So it might be 9 till 5.
Boom.
But if some of the top performers are coming in at 8:45 and they're seeing, and then other people are seeing them do that, and that they're performing and going the extra mile. And again, that's why I say in a non-toxic way, not to make people feel that they're going to miss out, but just that sort of leaning on what other successful sales reps are doing. You can then build that culture, and other people can kind of see what works and what doesn't. And then that just kind of builds into the team. Let's say if somebody complains about something in the room, and the rest of the team are like, we just get on with that. We don't complain. Or if there's coffee cups everywhere and one person goes and takes them, they see that is just the general work ethic of the group. Obviously, if you've got a bad culture, then that breeds as well. But I was really lucky with my team in the fact that we started from 2 people, then we had 4, then we had 6. So we had 100% retention rate at one point as well. Wow. So it was really good. We just had this really positive, reinforced culture going throughout the team, and it really, really worked well. And obviously it can go the other way as well, but because we had such strong members, they were all on their own journey within the company. They all had forward momentum, and then when somebody new came in, they could see the path they could go on. And I just don't think that would have been possible had they all been working from home.
What would you say was the most effective piece of advice, strategy, whatever, that you implemented in that team that made the biggest difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think personally,
got rid of the chairs.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. Well, we did. We did end up doing some office move arounds as well, because what I did is I did pair a few of the more experienced people with some of the newer people, but then we always brought 2 people on at the same time. Okay. We were lucky to do that, and the business owners were they put their money where their mouth was and did invest on recruitment. But bringing 2 people in at the same time is really effective, because they had sort of joined at that same period. So there was probably an element of competitiveness between them, but also there were 2 people starting. There wasn't just one newbie, there were 2. And then what they did is the people that had joined before them, what we did is, and that sort of goes on the mentorship, on the second point, the mentorship and learning, they would learn from the other people in the room. So they would pick up on cues, they would listen to the sales patter. And again, you can't get that from remote working. So although we would have a training infrastructure, we'd have materials, I would do training with them, actually having the other members of the team that were doing very well themselves, that almost created, again, this environment of learning without even knowing that you're doing it. So I think, that was the biggest thing, bringing on 2 people at a time and then pairing them up with more senior members, and then also gave the senior members some more responsibility and a little bit more self-worth and drive towards their next goals, because if they were then looking to go into management in the future, that just gave them a little taste of that and gave them a little bit more accountability as well.
Okay, interesting.
And then that goes in nicely to kind of the work ethics and management presence, because say as a manager, I'm always looking out to try and make sure that there's an equilibrium throughout the team, that there's a nice balance of enthusiasm and productivity and competitiveness, while also it doesn't fall into toxic culture and it doesn't become and people don't get too disheartened if they've not hit targets. So being there and being able to witness that and being able to actively manage it, rather than having to wait for you've got your one-to-one scheduled in 1 month time and then having a 1 hour session on a Teams call to talk about all of the woes of that particular individual. Being able to be there, be present, and just spot tiny cracks that might be appearing before they become a chasm. You are able to then, a good manager anyway, and which I would obviously put myself in that bracket, they will identify those things in the moment. And then you could do so much. I mean, if you really love your staff and you really enjoy working with them, and as I say, I was really lucky in the fact that I employed all of I didn't walk into a new team. I ultimately hand these contracts out to these people, so that we'd got a really good relationship, and I was happy with the type of people that we'd employed. It just meant that I was able to find cues for when there was an issue and go to one side, conduct active training on the spot. You might hear a phone call and you just think, oh, actually, they've just used the wrong phrase there. That might be a bit disconcerting for the client. And you could home in on that. The way you would do that from remote working, somebody against it would say, well, you would listen to and you would record your stuff. Well, you're not doing it there and then. Then you're bringing it up separately, so it's going to be an issue. You can't do it subtly and subliminally. You can't just then go, oh, that was a really good call you made earlier. I just thought maybe if you just maybe use this word instead of this word while you're at the coffee machine, it doesn't come across like you're berating them or telling them they're not doing a good job. So all of those kind of unknown factors, those things that kind of get lost, I think those are the bits as a manager I found that I would have definitely struggled managing people from home, because the only way I feel I would have been able to then do it is to have micromanaged, which everybody hates the word micromanagement, but unfortunately I think that would have been the only way I'd have been able to measure people's success, and I just don't think it would have felt as organic or as would have been as effective.
No, I can see that. I mean, as someone who's at the flip side of, I've worked in offices a long time ago. And certainly, my experience of that, I think, because even back then, you're talking 2008, 9, 10, that sort of it, late noughties. There were a few times when I would work from home, but they were very, few and far between. But I know, I did more work when I was in the office, and I know that, and not only that, but you're around people. You can just go, Gavin, what does that mean, or what's that, or how do I do this? You just walk over to someone and talk to them, and they can go, blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, the flip side of that is that, like my wife sometimes will say it's much easier for her to work from home, because especially if she's working on something where she's just sifting through a lot of documents, she will find that she just doesn't have the distractions, because you've got people coming up to her all the time in the office and wanting to talk to her and stuff, and she'll find she can just chunk through.
And I think that can be on both sides of the argument, the infrastructure of the business. So for example, at the head office, they should create space for people to go and do deep work or administration roles where they can't be disturbed. But equally, if it is a work from home environment where you've got communication channels and everything is set up for them to work from home. So I think in both cases, it's then the business's responsibility to set that up. And I completely agree. And sometimes you just need a different environment to do certain roles.
Yeah, 100%. I also think it's just a time management thing as well, because people are so used to employee X comes in at 9 o'clock, sits down. The first sort of half an hour is going to be spent getting a coffee, answering emails, titting about, talking to their co-workers, blah, 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 blah. Then they crack on with project X, and then they probably get a phone call, and then they have to deal with it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like the day is sort of just broken up into...
I used to say to my team, it sounds really awful. So like on a Monday morning, I hated at 9 o'clock the question, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
I sound like a miserable arsehole. I know that. But I ultimately what I'd say is that, can we chat about that later on in the day? I just used to hate that sort of thing at this on a Monday when we need to get going. And I'm also not a fan of passive questions that are just sort of there for politeness.
You don't really care.
You don't really care what happened on my weekend. No. So let's talk about that later. But I just used to hate that sort of that bit, and it would slow down. But then I guess that's maybe how people are bonding as well. So it's sort of
what I mean by that though is I'm not just sort of talking about small talk or anything, but it's more the case of saying, right, no, Wednesday is your admin day or your whatever day, And I know that can't work like this in every business, but it's allotting days for when that person is in the office and available for comms or available for advice or whatever. You could even set up clinics where heads of departments or experts in certain things sit around the table with everyone and get asked questions. But then that's the allotted time for that. And then the time when they need to focus and get on with stuff is the time when they're either at home or they're in an isolated office or something like that. They just break up the week differently, but I know it's not always possible.
Well, I think it could also be used as a reward structure. So I also had salespeople within that team that really valued, and I think when you're looking at reward structures within your commission structure or your set, especially this goes for sales, but not everybody is purely money motivated. Obviously, the remuneration they get in terms of finances is normally quite high on the list, but sometimes it's more than that. Somebody's satisfaction with their job is their remote working, or just ultimately having more responsibilities or having more autonomy. And that can be seen as, okay, sometimes people might get a title change, and that can be a big thing for your CV, but just makes you feel a little bit more self-assured and that you're going somewhere in your career. Now, I had people, and again, during the time we were there, this was something that we discussed implementing, and it's definitely something I would do, is if you've got a 100% work from the office scheme in place, but you did recognise that there were individuals that wanted some autonomy, you would then set targets in place that if they hit those, that they then unlocked that work from home ability, and it actually becomes not a standard thing within the company. It's not a given right that you get it. It becomes a reward of trust, and once you've been here for a certain amount of time and once you've done so much, and then when those new people come in, you can still advertise that you're a business that does look to do that, and within certain frameworks it still works within the general operations of the business, but then you can reward it. Well, actually Dave gets to go and he does a 4-day office week.
Rather than that, though, here's another spin on this, and tell me if I'm wrong. But would it not also be another way to do it is to say, right, here are your 3 KPIs that I want, and this is how I'm going to measure your productivity. And for the first month, you're going to work in the office. Second month, you're going to work from home. We're going to measure those KPIs, and whichever one you've been more productive in, you'll be, then you won't, it's not like you'll get to just always work from home, or you'll be forced to always work from the office, but we're going to weight your time more in that area. Because, yeah, of course, if you want to work from home, you're going to go home and you're going to smash out a load of stuff to try and prove that you should work from home.
Yeah.
But then the good thing about that is that, it doesn't, and it could be a thing where it doesn't really matter where you do it from. I would ultimately land on, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break your week up. You're either going to be 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, or 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. But we're going to figure that out based on these KPIs. Yeah. And then that way you're incentivizing whichever one they want to do. They're going to try and...
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that you still then need to make sure that the other things are hit, like the development of the juniors coming in and the manager. So I think it could work with certain size teams. Yeah. So you get to the point where everybody's hit that metric, and then all of a sudden you've got the same problem again and nobody's working in together. So I think you need to be careful with how you manage it. It might be that you've got part of your team. I mean, we had a complete eclectic mix of different personalities, which was, again, I think is brilliant. Just get different personalities.
Yeah,
it really they work off each other. But I had some people in that room that didn't really want to work from home either. They loved coming into the office. So that's kind of ideal, because then you've got a couple. If you've got just a few that really like that autonomy, they want to go out there and they just want to be able to work from home as much as they can. It's then just a reward system. But then you've got them in on the days they're in. The juniors can then sort of say, oh, we've got Mike in today. We'd really want to listen to his sales pattern and what he does. How's he get those clients? And I want to ask him some questions about how he's built up his portfolio this big. And maybe that can all feed in. It's individual. Each case is nuanced, but I think there's definitely some hybrid options there that can really work if you've got the infrastructure within the business and you facilitate it, and also got the people that you can trust. Because I think at the end of the day, we have gone too far, and I know, as I said, it's swung back the other way now, but we have gone to the point where the employee has been dictating, and I just don't think that is the way it should be. If you want to be that, go and start a business for yourself. Go and become self-employed if you want to make all of those decisions yourself. But at the end of the day, the employer is they're paying your paycheck. They in theory should be making the right decisions for the business, and there needs to be some work-life balance. I get it. But then it's your decision to go and either find a different role or go and do work for yourself.
Well, I mean, I as an employee, you're trading uncertainty for certainty for a wage. So in other words, you're going, well, I'm going to get paid and I don't have to worry about what this month's figures look like, in the sense of, it's not my backside on the line here. And I haven't had to found this company and see it through the dark ages and get it to the point where it's, so that's what you're trading. Yeah, you could probably go earn more money ultimately if you went in and started scaling something up, but you will have to take the uncertainty and all that stuff. So, yeah, and you're doing that, and that means that you are therefore at the whim of the employer. And the job market, as I understand it at the moment, is not one in which employees necessarily have lots of leverage, unless of course you're very highly skilled and sought after and have a great track record. That's different. But and then also a lot of people in the job market don't understand leverage and don't understand, and that's fine. You don't have to, because you're going into a job, but you also do, but they've got it in their heads that they're owed this.
Yeah. And I guess the problem is with competition, if there's another employer that offers the same package out there that does meet your requirements, then you've got the opportunity to go and work for them. And at the end of the day, the cream will rise to the top. The most efficient business and the setup that business has will be the most successful. In theory, they will then be the ones that people want to go and work for. But it's good to have some options out there. I just think it needs to go back, and I think it has swung, but maybe it will go too far to start with, and we'll find a balance in between, like many things.
Yeah.
I thought I'd ask, this is a bit random, but I thought I'd go, we might have our biases on this, and I thought maybe we would bring to the table some of our highly regarded people that we mentioned, Rory Sutherland as well. I'm going to drop him into pretty much every episode. But any of the long-term listeners, they will definitely know who Rory Sutherland is. Yeah. So I thought we would use, I'd use ChatGPT for its purposes. Now, I need to clarify here that these are not the actual words of the people. This is what ChatGPT thinks they would say about it. So I thought, I asked ChatGPT what authorities in business might say, and I started with Rory, and it's come back that it thinks Rory would likely say that remote work optimizes logic, cost-saving focus, but fails on psychological needs, which we've been discussing. So in short, remote work removes the serendipity. So he might suggest that hybrid policies work best when they acknowledge irrational human needs, belonging, status, visibility.
Yeah, you know how that doesn't ring authentic, because not every other word was okay.
Okay.
So
okay,
I don't know.
I didn't do it. You're the actor. You should have done it. Actually, I should have given these to you. And then you've got to do Rory Sutherland, Daniel Priestley, Alex Hormozi, and do you know who Cal Newport is? No. Yeah, well, nobody else probably does. So we can just you can just make something up for him. But But yeah, it does sound very Rory, doesn't it?
No, it does. Yeah, and I
thinking outside the box.
I can see that. Yeah, I could see him saying that, definitely. Yeah, and it's true. And I think I have heard him say something to that effect, where he said people discount the advantage of that kind of stuff, serendipity, and yeah, like the opportunity of people bumping into ideas and stuff, which you just won't get in remote working. So yeah.
Okay, Daniel Priestley, I don't know, but maybe a little bit more niche. Yeah, he's I think he's Australian. He is Australian, and he's sort of got a global business. Does some marketing is mainly his sort of forte, but I think he's involved quite a few things. Been on quite a few podcasts. So he's all about strong entrepreneurial ecosystems. So it says that it thinks that he would say in-person contact creates faster trust and deal flow. Proximity breeds opportunity. So I guess being close to people, being around people. In his book, I remember talks about when he first arrived here in the UK, he arranged like a dinner with people. So it was again networking and being around people. So I guess that would maybe be in line with what he would say. He also speaks about energy transfer. So when you're in the room, things happen faster. And I do agree with that.
Yeah.
You can just get things done a little bit quicker.
You've generally got, it's hard to talk. It sounds tangential, but it isn't. A really great acting coach said that most actors forget that their partner in a scene has they have they could walk away, right? They have autonomy. So a lot of actors will play a scene as if that person is not going to walk away. Now, all right, they're not, because it's not scripted that way. But the point is, in reality, in life, so if you're phoning someone up on a sales call, that's a point of they can just hang up.
Yes.
If you're emailing them, they can just not reply. Whereas if you're in person with them, it's much harder for them to walk. I mean, they at least have to physically walk away from you. And I took that to heart. Certainly as an actor, I was like, yeah, bye, Jane. I took that time because I was like, actually, this is a really good point. Is that people have autonomy. If you're in a scene with someone and you're going to have an argument and stuff, well, what's to stop them walking away? And you have to put that energy into your performance. And the same thing I think is true of any human interaction. It's that you're trying to keep that person's attention, and on a phone that's harder because it's
lighter as well. I think we're getting I get emails, and sometimes they could be passive aggressive. You could be read something into it that there isn't.
Yeah,
I'm now actually getting emails that are clearly not being written by that person. That's a whole conversation for another day. Whereas, if you're in person, and we talked earlier about small talk, but you don't really do as much small talk. You might put small talk on an email and say, hope you've had a nice weekend, but it's a bit more to the point. Whereas you've got that politeness, and that you can also read more from the other person's reactions, micro expressions, and also there's not that delay as well between the communication. John, okay, you could have a Zoom and do something, I suppose, but actually being able to physically get it done and work with somebody. I mean, I've been creating this magazine, and the designer Kaz, shout out to Kaz, amazing guy. I'll put a link actually in the description for him. If anybody's looking to get any design work done, he's incredible. But we've been creating this magazine, which is obviously a lot of work goes into it. We want to make sure that the editorial side of it is all correct, and just check all the grammar, and there's been so many tweaks back and forth, and we've been able to and we did the whole thing, put it on Adobe and then put comments and change things, but then that changes other things. When I've just been in the office with him in front of the computer, we've got so much more done. Just a couple of hours, smashed through a couple of hours in front of the screen, and we just moved things, and then I'm able to go, oh, could you just move that one a bit to the left? And just, well, what's it look like if you just make his face a bit smaller? You're not wasting
time on interpretation, are you?
And you can tangibly do it with him. So that's a real life example of being in the room. Yeah, big fan of that. Okay, Alex Hormozi, we've mentioned on previous podcast, American acquisition.com is his thing, isn't it? I mean, if you've not heard of him, go and check him out. He's big on big business advice, and I kind of guess what he'd say, but again, these aren't his words. But he emphasizes the speed and standards. Would argue remote culture often drops standards unless leadership is hyper intentional. ChatGPT says he may say remote can work, but only if you're ruthlessly good at systems and comms. So I think that's it. Like kind of as I was saying earlier, having the infrastructure, if you're going to do the remote stuff, you need to be like really on it.
Yeah.
Good team, trusted team, and really good infrastructure.
100%. Yeah.
So for balance, I think it's worth mentioning because I feel we've maybe leaned, and although I said I was going to be, it'd be controversial, it's not that controversial. But for balance, I think it's worth mentioning authorities that have varying opinions. So I've done a bit of research on this, and there's a guy called Jason Fried, co-founder of Basecamp, and he would completely disagree generally with most of that. He's been running remote first teams for over a decade, and he'd say the idea that you need to be in the office to build culture or catch issues early just shows poor systems and poor management. For him, it's about trust, clarity, and judging by outcomes, not presenteeism.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what do you think to that?
I do get that argument, but it assumes that it's a binary choice, and that presenteeism is all that you'll measure. And of course, no, I don't think any. Gone are the days where you punch a card and go in, and that's all anyone cares about. Maybe in certain sectors, but basically, most places don't do that. That's not the point. I mean, they can maybe measure when someone arrives and leaves, but that's not the only KPI that anyone's going to show. I mean, yeah, he's right, and I do think that it's a lot of what can unravel when people are not around each other is understanding what's expected of them, understanding the ethos of the company, all that stuff. So yeah, of course, comms is very important, but I think that's true in the workplace too. I think if you've got a team, there's got to be clarity around what the vision is and what the direction of travel is, and that is something people still forget in both environments. So I think that just rings true in both cases. I don't think it's particularly unique to.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Well, look, I've done one more to kind of bring some balance. So there's another voice on this with a balanced but important opinion. His name's Cal Newport from Pro Remote. So he's author of Deep Work and A World Without Email. So I've not read these ethers, but Newport is a professor at Georgetown and widely cited productivity and workplace thinker. So stance on remote work, Cal Newport doesn't blindly promote remote work, but he's very critical of traditional office culture, especially the constant distractions, unnecessary meetings, which is fair enough, and shallow communication. No, that's my little thing, the shallow communication. Would would kind of be the small talk. That's fairly balanced, isn't it? I think that's kind of like where I'm sort of at with it, generally speaking. I think it can work, and I think if you've got the right infrastructure, there are negatives too. And I think I've known businesses that do have a bad culture, and obviously if you're all there under the same roof, then that's only going to breed, isn't it?
Yeah. I think toxicity can probably spread a lot faster in that environment, and I also think time can be wasted. Complacency, I suppose, could set in a bit more as well. But I mean, look, there's all sorts of pluses and minuses to both, and it's just going to depend on what it is you're doing and how it is you want to do it.
I think if you're a good company at the end of the day, then really you're going to put the infrastructures in place anyway. Like that point about the culture. If you've got a good culture, then people are going to want to come into the office anyway. They're going to want, obviously there's geographical reasons, so I guess we'll put that caveat in there. But I think when it doesn't work is if you've ultimately got a crappy business model in the first place, or crappy culture, or if you've just not set up the systems. So you're trying to effectively put in a good remote work system, but it fails, and there's just not the right communication in there or the right systems in place. So I think it's either you fix it at the top end first, but then if you are going to implement it, you just need to make sure the systems are working and that you've got a strategy in place to manage KPIs and everything else.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on this subject that you? I think we've kind of broadly covered it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else that's pressing on this issue. We've solved remote working.
I think so. Week. Yeah, they're done.
Anyway,
now I mean, I don't have a dog in the race really, or the fight, or whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't. I think I am beholden to remote working by the nature of how my company is set up. Though I would like to ultimately work with the core team in an office, it's kind of, well, that'll come as and when. But I think so. I kind of have to embrace it to a degree. But I don't see why it has to be a binary. I don't understand why we have to one or the other. It's kind of like, well, that's the divisive thing you're talking about. I think that a lot of conversations around this tend to be in that area, but who's talking about it? I think if you're into this subject and you want to find out more about it, don't just listen to people who are extreme on.
I couldn't agree more. I think so many subjects we try and make it binary, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's way more complicated or simple.
The solution might be simple, but your understanding of it probably just needs to broaden somewhat. But anyway,
brilliant. Well, hopefully these issues are going to be something that, as our businesses grow, that we have to combat with. But for now, hopefully we've shared some of our wisdom and stolen some of it from the internet, and that might be of use for any business owners out there that are contemplating with this idea or struggling with it. Please reach out if you've got any questions or you'd like to get in touch with us. We've got an email address, Duncan, haven't we?
We do, and I'm going to put it on the screen now because I've forgotten what it is. I think it's makeityourbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. But I will make sure it's on the screen. We'll get it on.
Lovely. All right, brilliant. Well, look, thank you everybody for watching, listening. We really appreciate the growth the channel's having now, which is really good. Now we've, as I say, we've maybe lost some listeners after that one. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, do all that nice stuff, and we'll see you on the next one.